Welcome to The Definitive Wrap, where we report the truth about American exceptionalism. We love our flag, we love our country, and we believe in America. The Definitive Wrap, where we respect people of faith, the men and women in blue, and our support for Israel. And now your hosts, Bela Sebro, she's the nice one, and Alan Skorsky. He's not so nice. But together they are The Definitive Wrap.
I'm Alan Skorsky with my co-host Bela Sebro, and welcome to The Definitive Wrap, where we discuss the news items the mainstream media just won't touch. The Definitive Wrap is proud to be the official podcast of VinNews.com. Once upon a time, anti-Semitism was considered taboo like other forms of racism. But we are now in 2021. America has returned to normalcy, as Joe Biden would put it. And anti-Semitism is not only on the rise, it is skyrocketing. To make matters worse, it is becoming very normalized, thanks to big tech, the media, academia, the halls of Congress, and now a perverted new movement called woke-ism, which together with a very determined and successful alliance with Free Palestine and Hamas caucus, have mainstreamed and normalized the most virulent form of Jew hatred not seen since 1930s Europe. Anti-Semitism is no longer the domain of the David Dukes of America, but has permeated every aspect of American life. In 2012, a pre-med student named Lara Kollab publicly stated her intent to inject dangerous drugs into Jewish patients. When this became public in 2018, our guest, Kenneth Ryesky, whom Bela will introduce shortly, wrote a column in the Algemeiner titled, "Hospitals and Schools Must Ensure That No Medical Professional Ever Uses Their Position to Harm Jews." I warned then that for every one person like her who gets exposed, there are hundreds who are under the radar. Last week, a Phoenix-based doctor from a children's hospital named Fidaa Wishah tweeted that Israel's end is near. 2 weeks ago in Philadelphia, an Israeli catering truck business called Moshava, Philly, was disinvited to a food event organized by the city of brotherly love after allegedly receiving threats of violence if they are allowed to participate. We will discuss these and other issues with attorney Kenneth Ryesky during our interview. Bela?
Thank you, Alan. One of the oldest binding documents in history is the Hippocratic Oath that is held so sacred by physicians. It is accepted that these and those idealistic men and women who go into medicine, who swear to dedicate their lives to treat the ill, are doing so because they are humanitarians to the highest degree. And as they are sworn in, these men and women see this oath as a promise to uphold medicine and act in the patient's interest. We are talking about a code of ethics that is not just lip service. People who become physicians dedicate their entire lives forever to heal, protect, and preserve the privacy of their patients. The color of their skin does not matter. Their gender does not matter. Their religion does not matter. It does not matter if the doctor is a Palestinian or Islamist. And thank God, in most cases, it does not matter until it does. Until the day that a doctor decides that the hatred of Jews takes over the oath to heal the sick. Sadly, in our rich history, this is not the first time that a doctor sworn to heal used their position to cause harm. And in a sick, twisted way, when it comes to a hater of Jews, the oath does not matter. It is the killing of Jews that becomes their ambition. Joseph Mengele, a German physician, also known as the Angel of Death, didn't just make threats. He performed daily experiments on Jews and selected the victims to be killed in the gas chambers and even administered the gas. But that a doctor today should even have thoughts about killing Jews is something we do not expect. Yet it happened when Ohio doctor at the Cleveland Clinic, Lara Kollab, posted on her Twitter account that she would purposely give all the Yehuds, the Jews, the wrong medication. With us today to talk about the rise of Palestinian-ists and Islamists going to professional schools in medicine, law, and dental, and their public threats against Jews, and whether the professional associations have to change their standards to reject these students to the bar or terminate their licenses. So with us today to talk about this is Kenneth Ryesky. Kenneth is an attorney licensed to practice law in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and before the United States Supreme Court, and he is now based in Israel. He has written many scholarly articles on this topic. Ken, I know you want to be called Ken, right? Not Kenneth?
Yes.
Welcome to our show.
It's my pleasure to be here. First of all, the French branch of my family pronounces it risque, but I pronounce it Ryesky.
Ah, okay, all right.
And, I'm pleased to
I
be
have
here.
one question. One question. In this day and age, in the United States, how can this be happening? Yes, that Ohio doctor was fired, but what about those professionals who are not tweeting about their intentions, whom we don't know about what they're thinking? What are they thinking in their heads? What's going on in their heads that they're not tweeting about?
That's very scary because you know that Lara Kollab cannot be the only one. You know that she's the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely.
My problem with her is that she had tweeted that the Canary Mission found her out before she was actually in medical school, but she had already started in a pre-med program. Now she used the term meds for medication. My own son does not use the term meds or for medication. Never mind that his mother, my wife, is a doctor. That's doctor speak, and she was already doing a pre-med program. So she had already started on the course of towards medical school.
Right. I believe she was a resident. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Counselor, I'm going to ask a very, very provocative question. If I was a member of Congress or if I was Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson asking this, I'd be creating an SH storm. But I'm going to do this anyhow. Do professional schools have to now reconsider their entrance vetting system? I know as people say that's a civil rights issue, but you know what? In America now we have intense vetting to allow people coming in from certain countries. Will professional schools have to vet everyone's social media? Will they have to keep special guard, knowing that not everyone is going to be stupid enough to tweet their intent when they're younger? This is not, again, this new anti-Semitism is permeating every aspect of our lives. Business, academia, it's in the halls of Congress. This is not a one and done. This is not a one time. This is not a knucklehead like David Duke. This is a real movement.
The short answer, I think, is yes. I will preface this by saying that at one point in time, my wife was on the admissions committee at the University Hospital Stony Brook Medical School. And at one point she was, that's a whole nother story. But the short answer is they have to check it out. They have to go beyond the paper admission packages that the students submit, the prospective students submit. They got to go beyond that. They got to do due diligence. Now, when I was growing up, my dad was an engineer. He especially was radar, and I heard that when I was in Israel in 1973 that he had done some stuff that made a big difference during the 6-Day War. And then I found, after he died, I found some among his papers, some thank you letters from the Israeli government. He never talked about what he did. He had a security clearance. He couldn't talk. And I really began to understand that when I had my own security clearance, when I worked for the Department of Defense. They checked me out. The DOD checked me out. And then the upside of that was when I came to work for the IRS, they hired a bunch of us. And because I gave him the serial number of my investigation for my security clearance, I was one of the first ones who came back after they hired us with a clearance that, I'm okay. They checked me out. I mean, people get checked out anyway, and they have to do what's called due diligence. The schools have to do due diligence. Now the question becomes, what about the civil rights of the people they're checking out? I would say that if I held all the cards, then the schools would have to have some sort of system whereby if a student is rejected based on something that they find on the social media, something outside of the admission application papers, then the student needs to be confronted with them, and the student needs to be given an opportunity to explain it, and maybe even have it reviewed by a, let's use a Freedom of Information Act model here. If your request for information under the Freedom of Information Act and federal or New York State, the Freedom of Information law is declined, then you have a right to appeal to a second disinterested bureaucrat who can then make a decision, and only then can you take it to court. And I think schools should have to have some sort of some sort of neutral third party to review it if the student wants to explain it. I mean, people have been denied credit. Once upon a time, my mother was denied credit because I had a cousin named Harold Ryesky. He should rest in peace. But he was doing the drug scene, and his life story was that he would get to support his habit. He'd engage in burglaries. He'd get caught. He'd go to prison, and then he behaved well in prison, so they let him out. Wash, rinse, and repeat. So H. Ryesky Harold, H. Ryesky Helene. My mom's name is Helene, and my mom got this is before the Fair Credit Reporting Act. She got denied credit at the Philadelphia department store. So my dad took a day off from work and went down with her, and he explained that he talked to them, but there are no mandatory procedures in those days for that to happen. There has to be some sort of protection for the students. They have to craft some sort of, they're walking a very tight balance. They have to find some sort of protection to ensure the students' rights. And in the meantime, they have to do their due diligence.
Ken, I understand that your own wife, who when she was an aspiring physician as a teenager, witnessed a terrorist attack in Jerusalem that killed 14 people and injured more than 62 people. And it was at that point that she realized and she resolved that she would, without doubt, study to become the best she could as a physician to help the sick and injured. So my question is, realistically, and I know what we spoke about just a minute ago, how can professional schools ascertain deadly intentions? Not every student uses social media. How can professional medical and other facilities ascertain deadly intentions by their very own, by one of their own? There has to be more than due diligence that you mentioned. I know civil rights and all, and you know that goes without saying, but we need to protect innocent people. It's just not enough. I don't think enough is being done.
I have to agree with you. Now, I'm going to bear with me. My favorite course in law school was psychiatry and the law. It was taught by two professors.
You know what? I was hoping you would bring that up.
Yeah, I was taught by two professors. Professor Traylor was the lawyer. Professor Heller was the shrink, and he was an expert. He testified in court cases. He was an expert witness. Professor Traylor had a significant hearing loss. Professor Heller had a profound hearing loss. So we would sit in the classroom, we'd scream our questions to Professor Traylor, who would scream them to Professor Heller, who was sitting right next to him. And then Professor Heller would answer in a normal voice. They had a comedy act and they played it for all it was worth. Well, there's this one course that law students take when they take their torts courses. It's called Tarasov versus Board of Regents of the University of the State of California. There's this one student named Tatiana Tarasov. I believe she was from Brazil or somewhere in South America. And she was, and there was this one other student who had a relationship with her. His name was Padar, or whatever his name was. And he had informed one of the university's psychiatrists. He was getting help there, and he informed of his intention to do it. And they never warned Tatiana about it. And he, sure enough, he killed her. And Professor Heller was saying that, yes, psychiatrists can diagnose those things. There are ways of diagnosing it. There are ways of diagnosing it. This is back in the days when I was in when I was in law school, I'm sure the technology has improved by now, that there are ways that they can tell. A good psychiatrist can tell when someone really is a danger. So I think that they do have the means to do it. It's at their disposal.
So you're saying that a psychological evaluation is in order?
Yes.
Yeah, but are they going to do it for every student, or are they going to do it just for Muslims, or are they going to have to go through this now rigorous through every group? This way they can't be accused of discrimination.
Well, there you have a problem, because, if you do it for everybody, then you can't be accused of discrimination, but it takes a lot of your resources.
Right.
There's something against, it's called profiling. Profiling is a tool. Like every other tool, it has its uses, has misuses. For example, I have here a wrench here. This wrench here is if I'm using it as a hammer, it's not the right use for it. And I have a sledgehammer, which I gave to my son. He's now using it in his business. Now, for me to use that sledgehammer to repair my computer is a misuse of that tool.
Of course.
So profiling has its uses. El Al has been doing profiling for years. Back in 1973, when I was returning from Israel right before the war, I did a little side trip through Europe. So I had come from taking the train from Munich to Amsterdam. That's a whole nother story. I got screwed up by the Israeli bureaucracy, so I decided that I'd just enjoy Europe for a few days. So I'm in Amsterdam. I go on the train in Munich. I go to Amsterdam, and then I decide I check my luggage at in one of those lockers in the airport there. Remember when you had lockers, you could leave stuff in there? You could just arrive 5 minutes before the plane left. Well, El Al, I go to a kiosk that said El Al, and I say, I want to get a ticket back to the United States. And so they look at me, and they said, well, there's a family that has not shown up. There's a flight that's leaving in 45 minutes. I can put you on standby, and then you'll go to the El Al boarding gate, and if the family doesn't show, then you're on that plane. So, I had a few addresses in Amsterdam, people I could hook up with. So I figured, hey, why not? I'm starting school in a week and a half. So I go there, and then I exchanged my Deutschmarks into dollars. And then I'm all verschwitzt when I get to the El Al gate. And they start asking me questions there. What were you doing in Israel? I was at an archaeological dig. Where was the dig? Tel Sheva. How was Professor Yadin? If I had answered in the affirmative, they would have grabbed me, because it was not Professor Yadin, it was Professor Aharoni, and Yadin and Aharoni were at each other's throats. They were rivals, but they knew what questions to ask you. And maybe they have to do some profiling. Maybe the fact that you're a Muslim may play into there. Although I will say that when I'd say that a half year after I made Aliyah, I was hospitalized for 10 days in Israel, and I was treated by Arab and Jewish physicians and nurses and other paraprofessionals, and I had complete confidence in them.
Sure.
I guess it helped that my wife's department chair, who knew all these people, my wife was only been there, working there a few months, but her department chair said not to worry about it. And, I didn't have any concerns.
Well, thank God in most cases,
Right.
it's okay. I mean, most cases, doctors who are Muslim are dedicated. We're talking about the isolated cases, and which is a problem, which is certainly a big issue, and we do need to protect people.
My father, he would always tell me when I was growing up that he said, I got asked the question again today. The security guy at his company came to him and said, that time of the year again, your parents were born in Russia. Have you had any contact with any of the relatives in Russia? And of course he could say no, because contact was broken back in 1935. And I parenthetically stated that 61 years later, I reestablished the contact. That was after I had left the government, and my security clearance was no longer relevant. But he could honestly say that he had no contact with his people in Russia. Now, it certainly didn't help things that not one of my grandfathers, Dr. Alexander Ryesky, spelled the surname the same way, ran for Congress in 1922 from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. He came on the Communist Party ticket. He came in 6 out of 6 candidates. The fifth place was the Jobless Party. But, here, this is back when the Communist Party was still legal in the United States. But my father was subjected to more intense questioning on account of that. He was profiled. And back when Jonathan Pollard got arrested, a lot of us Jewish people with security clearances felt that we were being given more intense scrutiny. And that was demonstrated with the David Tannenbaum case.
Right. So again, that David Tannenbaum is actually a friend of mine, and we interviewed him several months ago. But I want to follow up though with what you said earlier about profiling and allowing students the chance to clarify themselves. Recently in Congress, Ilhan Omar, she's from Somalia. She compared the U.S. and Israel to Hamas and the Taliban. And when she was called out, she clarified her words. And the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, says her clarification is good enough for me. This is America, where we allow the most, if you're from a certain group, you can get away with anything. Just clarify and you're good. Jews don't get that kind of break. But that's a different story, though. So pursuant to what you said earlier about giving students a chance to clarify themselves, it's very easy. You can say, I was young, I didn't mean it, I was stupid, I've learned my lesson. And then again, Bela had mentioned earlier about isolated incidents. I don't know how isolated it really is. There is such a movement in America, the Free Palestine movement. When you have members of Congress, there are 96 members of the Progressive Caucus. That's almost a third of all Democrats. And when you now have a legitimized movement where the leaders of Congress are afraid of these four pipsqueaks who are all freshmen, this tells me that there is a rise and a legitimacy of what they're calling, and because Free Palestine means erase Israel. It does not mean let's fight for two states. And this is the rise that has been legitimized throughout this country. So I'm guaranteeing you that, what Lara Kollab did 10 years ago, that was isolated. What happened last week in Phoenix, that's no longer going to be isolated. It's going to become more of the norm.
Okay, now Free Palestine means more than eliminate Israel. It means eliminate the Jews, first of all. Let's understand that. Right. But we have one thing that we didn't have back in my day when I had my security clearance. It's called the internet. And there are breadcrumbs, if you will, on the internet. Let's compare that to what should be operative as New York's or any other state's parole system and the parole board. For the first, for people convicted of violent crime, it's very, very rare that they will be given parole the first time out. But after supposedly the board will give them, never mind Mike Huckabee and Maurice Clemens, never mind that. But supposedly the board will require them to demonstrate this. Now, you had the Charles Friedgood case where the board shied away from it. They just gave him parole when he contested it. But he had everything going for him to show that he had rehabilitated himself, that the murder of his wife, never mind that it was for a mistress, but he, in my opinion, demonstrated it sufficiently for the board. Meantime, the Kathy Boudin case, I think Kathy Boudin was given too much of a pass. Never mind that she is an un-Jew. Never mind that.
Right.
Ken, with regard to professional institution, we know there is a problem. And when I said earlier, isolated situations, it is with regard to doctors intending to kill Jews. Thank God it doesn't happen on a daily basis. We hope it doesn't happen on a daily basis. And that's why the psychological evaluations that you mentioned, Ken, is definitely very, very important. And you know what? Even a few was way too much. Even if it's one, it's way too much. That goes without saying. You had written an article, that's what I'd like to talk to you about. You had written an article that University of Michigan has a big problem. Yes. So, we're not talking here right now about a medical facility, but University of Michigan And I'd like you, if you could please explain to our audience how you got involved and what happened in that particular circumstance. So we know it's not just medical facilities. We know that it's professional institutions.
Yes, it is professional institutions. Now you had this one guy there. His name was what was his name? The professor there. His name slips me. I'm over 65 years old. His name was what name? John Lippold Cheney. He had promised a student a recommendation to attend Tel Aviv University. Then he backtracked on it when he found out that the university he was attending was in Israel. And he took the attitude. He said, the school has to respect my political obligations.
Right.
So I shudder to think what happens if it enters a medical profession. What happens if physicians start treating people based upon political obligations? And my wife, as shuddered as I was by it, my wife was all the more so, because it's scary if people's political obligations trump with a small t their professional obligations.
How
did you get involved in that? How did you get involved in that situation, in that particular situation?
I'm having trouble hearing. You're coming through fuzzy. Your voice is coming through fuzzy.
Okay. Are you hearing me now?
I hear you, but it's all like crackly and fuzzy.
Okay. Can you tell us how you got involved in that situation in Michigan, in the University of Michigan?
I saw it, and I just there's something about it that rubbed me the wrong way, so I wrote the article and I submitted it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Counselor, I still have another question. You mentioned earlier about when criminals, when they go before a parole hearing, and they want to know if they've been rehabilitated. In those cases, sometimes an act of crime is committed. It's targeted. It's a one-time deal. Someone was triggered. They were angry. But what's happening here is, though, these Palestinianists are motivated by an ideology. And yes, there are some who convert. We've met them before. We've had guests on this program who belong to Muslims Against Antisemitism. So by no means is this are we grouping everyone together? But there just is a very, very large pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel movement growing in this country, motivated by an ideology where it's a mitzvah for them. It's bragging rights to say how many Jews they have harmed. A few weeks ago in Lawrence, New York, a Jewish boy was beat up by a Palestinian mob, and upon his release through bail, he said he would do it again. So that again shows that this is driven by ideology, not by I was triggered by anger, I'm sorry, I saw something on TV. And these people who are in medicine, if they're talking this way, then you know that they are driven by a deep by passion, and it's not going to happen just once until they get caught.
Yeah, and that's very scary. Now it goes. Let's tap into the interview you had last week with Jeff Lax. I taught at the City University of New York at a different college, at Queens College. And my department chair, who was analogous to him, he's a black hat yeshiva bacher, Israel Blumenfrucht of the Department of Accounting at Queens College. And, he wears his kippah, he wears his black hat. Right. I wore my kippah on campus. A lot of people in the department do. Queens College has a higher religious Jewish population because they're in Kew Gardens Hills. Correct. But I never had a problem with it, quite frankly. But it's now permeated down to the undergraduate level. Unfortunately, it's in the undergraduate level, and what's happening is that the whole faculty union, the faculty there, and the unions, faculty unions are they're breeding it. They're breeding it. He explained it to him, and I agree with what he said. 110%. In fact, the unions, the Professional Staff Congress, one thing that was not mentioned in your piece with Jeff Lax is that the Professional Staff Congress has at least they have what's called an agency fee. If you're not a member of the union, then you have to pay an amount equal to your union dues to them because they represent you in some of the benefits you get from the school. And it was suspended under a prior union administration because they had their own political reasons for suspending it. But when Barbara Bowen came and took over the Professional Staff Congress, she put it back in again. Barbara Bowen is a screaming leftist. I happen to get along with her reasonably well personally, but that doesn't change anything. So I figured I'd join the union because now, if I'm a member, they have to let me attend the union meetings, and they can't bar me from the union meetings. So I attended them, and I mentioned my views there. And of course, I was not very popular there, but so I'm not popular. So right. What?
Except that
they're very popular. Ken,
Bela, move back a little bit. Now you're clear again.
Okay, Ken, let's talk a bit about what you dubbed in your Times of Israel blog, the Philadelphia food fiasco, where Moshe Philly was disinvited from an event meant to assist immigrant businesses from a food festival. What was that all about? And again, my question is, how could this happen in this day and age?
Well, I think the answer lies partly in two words: Temple University. I got 2 sheepskins from them. I did my undergrad at Temple. I did my law at Temple. And the Temple University today is not the Temple University that I attended. It's a different animal altogether. It's not the Temple University that Russell Conwell founded. It's a whole different thing. Now, I saw there's always been some leftist movements there, but Temple University was founded because the University of Pennsylvania had Jew quotas. Now, quotas for Jews mean different things than quotas for other DDMGMs, downtrodden, disadvantaged minority group members. For the DDMGMs, the quota is a minimum. For Jews, it's a maximum. And Russell Conwell got a lot of Jews going to Temple University because they couldn't get in the University of Pennsylvania, at least not until after World War II when they had the GI Bill. And even then, they still had problems. But, my dad got his degree, his undergrad degree at Penn. But you have a lot of Jewish donors to Temple University, and they're the schmucks for donating money to them. You have the Schusterman Hall, you got Barak Hall, you got all these buildings named after Jewish donors who wrote large figure checks. And I think it has to be made clear that why does the Jewish community in Philadelphia support them all? And you have the Philadelphia Judenrat. They're screaming peace and brotherhood and kumbaya and all that stuff.
Right.
It's a problem. Now at Temple University, the 2 people who founded the Eat Up the Borders were Temple University students, and the Temple University Klein School of Business, Klein, another one of them. They boasted about her before this happened, like about a year and a half before it happened. They put a public relations piece boasting about that. One of their students, her name was Cindy Ngo. She has found this Eat Up the Borders so people can get together by eating food, and I think it was because they had this leftist ideology drilled into them, and maybe it may have started before they went to Temple, but at Temple it was only increased. In fact, you had that process at Temple all the time. Now, one of the things when I left high school, I was leaning towards being a liberal, but then when they had the Yom Kippur War, a lot of people in the leftist circles I was on the fringes of started turning against Israel. And then I realized that the leftists had a lot of things in common, like Trotsky, Slansky, Zinoviev, Robespierre. All of them were turned upon by their own leftists because they did not adhere to the party line. And I realized that because I am outspoken and I don't always think the way people tell me I have to think, they would eventually turn on me. I mean, even today, you have in Madison, Wisconsin, people were turning on Tim Carpenter. And then in Seattle, you have Kashama Sawant and Jenny Durkin. They used to be comrades, but now they're going at each other. The left turns on its own, it eats its own. And that's why I started to rethink things. That's what caused me to rethink it.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Our time is up. Thank you for joining us on the Definitive Wrap today. And thank you to our audience for tuning in, and to vinnews.com for our show being their official podcast.
Thank you.
Okay. My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to The Definitive Wrap with your hosts, Bela Sebro and Alan Skorsky. Be sure to tell your family and friends they also can listen to The Definitive Wrap on Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, and your favorite streaming service. See you next time on The Definitive Wrap.